Hi, I'm Jake from TradeLab.ai. Today, we're going to be talking about the Strategy Builder and how we can use it to create trading bots without code. I'm going to be going over a fairly in-depth tutorial on how the Strategy Builder works, all of its features, and how we can hook up alerts to the Strategy Builder so that we can build complex strategies with multiple different indicators. Let's get started. First, we're going to go into the My Strategy screen and open up the Strategy Builder by hitting the New button. The Strategy Builder has a couple of distinct parts. At the top, we can fill out a strategy name and fill out a description of the strategy. This is helpful for when we share the strategy. We can open up the share settings and determine how we want to share our strategy. Normally, we might want to just allow somebody to copy the strategy so that they can see the rules, how it works, and perhaps edit it for themselves. You can also allow following, which wouldn't allow them to edit the strategy or necessarily see how it works, but it would allow them to place trades along with the strategy without needing to set up alerts, or anything like that. So you can allow follow, and somebody can follow along with your trades. They can, of course, change their amount, they can change the leverage and that sort of stuff, but they would be placing it on the same symbol using the same strategy that you are. You can also share your alerts. So say that you want to allow copy, but you also want somebody to be able to copy it and use the same alerts that you're sending. You can do that as well by sharing the alerts. Note, of course, that if you don't own the alerts, such as if you're using a paid indicator like LuxAlgo, Market Cipher, something like that, you cannot and should not be sharing the alerts. You can also set up a image and a YouTube video so that when you share your strategy, somebody can take a look at it and understand how to use it. The Trade Settings panel is one of the more important sections of the Strategy Builder. Here, you can select your exchange and then select the symbol that you want to place a trade for. You then need to decide which side that you want to play on. You can go long or short if you are contract trading, and if you're trading spot, you'll always place a buy, and then the strategy will close by placing a sell order. You then need to define your amount. Amounts in TradeLab are defined in two different parts: the amount type and then the amount value. The amount type simply defines what type of number that you're describing. So if I wanted to place a trade for $50, I would say 50 with an amount type of USD. We will do the math for you on the back end, no matter if you're contract trading, spot trading. If you want to trade $50, you put in the dollar amount, USD 50, and we will place a trade for however that much is in the coin that you are trying to trade. Now, if you want to trade coin directly, we'll do the same thing. So I can trade 5 Cardano by putting 5 coin, and I have my symbol as ADA. I can also select percentage, and this allows me to use a percentage of my balance. So 5 would be 5% of my free available balance to trade ADA. So here, the great thing about using percentage as a amount type is that it allows you to compound. Because now, if I trade 5% and I profit, the next time that I place a trade for 5%, that 5% will be a little bit bigger because I made a profit earlier. So we're compounding our trades by using a percentage amount type. If you're trading contract, you can also set leverage. So this is the sort of margin leverage that you want to use. So if I say 1 and I place a trade for, say, 50, then my overall amount for the trade would be 50. However, if I say my leverage is 10, then my overall amount of the trade will be 500 and my margin will be 50. Um, that allows you to make more money, but you also lose money faster. For more information about contract and derivative trading, you can visit the education section um, and find out all about that. So moving on, we're going to take a look at take profit and stop loss. So take profit and stop loss work very much like amount. You can set a amount type, either USD, coin, or percentage. And this is based off of the entry price, right? So if I say my take profit is 3%, then that means from the point that I enter at, I'm going to go 3% above that, and I'm going to put my take profit. Same thing with stop loss. If I wanted to actually go, say, um, if I wanted to go 50 cents below my entry, then I would type 0.50, and now I would be 50 cents below the entry. I would put a stop loss. These stop losses and take profit lines that you enter in at the top here under trade settings are sent directly to the exchange. So that means they're put in as soon as we place the trade, and if you ever trigger those, you'll be first in line to try to get out and have your order filled. So this is the safest way to place a stop loss and take profit. However, these do not move. These are not dynamic. Um, and we will talk in just a moment about how using dynamic stop losses and moving them around via alerts can be helpful. So this is what I use this stop loss for, is sort of like a backstop. So this is the lowest stop loss I'll ever have. I might put this at, say, 4%, 5%. If I'm trading with 10 leverage, then a 4% stop loss means I'm losing 40% of my margin, right? Because 4 times 10. So if I'm trading 1 times leverage, then I can say, more like a 15% stop loss if I really wanted to go down. Now, you're going to be losing quite a bit, but that gives you room to breathe if that's what you're worried about with your strategy. And we can and in a moment, I'm going to talk about how we can roll that stop loss up off of that 15% and move it higher as our trade does better, right? 15 might be high, maybe 10, it's up to you. This is just a total example. But moving forward, this is the trade settings screen, and we also have an advanced settings. We can go over these a little bit later, but this is where you would set up your trailing or moving stop loss, and if you wanted to set a limit order, how you would offset that, or if you wanted to schedule this to turn off and on during certain times of the day, this strategy. So there's different things you can do there, but let's talk about the rules. This is the heart of the strategy builder, these rules down here. So building a strategy is all about creating fairly simple rules and combining them to create fairly complex behaviors. A simple rule consists of 2 different parts: a condition and actions. So condition statements would be sort of like, if my ATR is above, say, greater than 4, right? If my ATR is greater than 4, then I can place an order. And that's a very, very simple rule, right? So you would set up a alert in TradingView. It would fire off send ATR, and if that value ended up being greater than 4, then it would run the actions, which in this case is place order. So we would enter a trade using the amount and the leverage and everything that we set up here, and we would be in a trade. And since we're on the long side, we would enter a long, and then it would run our exit rules while we are in the trade. So a strategy has four different, really, yeah, four different steps to it. Okay, so a strategy starts by looking for an entry, and then it moves to a waiting state while it's trying to fill that order. While it's in the waiting state, it's not running any rules or anything like that. It runs the rules, but it's not placing any orders. It's not capable of moving in or out of its state until it fills or gets killed. That's another thing that we have here under advanced settings is the time of force. So you can fill or kill, good to close, immediate or cancel. And so it goes through the first stage, which is looking for entry, then the second stage, which is this lower section has two different parts. The left side, which are the blue entry rules, and the right side, which are the orange exit rules. The way strategies work is they have four different steps to them. To illustrate this, we'll move over to the monitor screen. Here we can see the four different steps of a strategy. So the first step is looking for entry. So in looking for entry, we are running our blue entry rules, and we're trying to determine when's a good entry, when we should place an order. After we place an order, we go into a pending period, which is awaiting or open fill. So this is the time when we've placed the order and we're waiting on the market for it to fill or it to time out or cancel out. If it cancels out, it'll go back to searching and try to place another order. If it succeeds, then we'll go into the open state where we have an open, long, or short, or open spot position. And at that point, we'll be running our exit rules, the orange block rules. Once those rules run and have decided it's a good time to place another trade or place another order, which would be exiting this trade, then it goes into a final awaiting close fill, at which point it's looking to fill the trade again. And when that's finished, we know the trade is complete, and we go back to searching to try to open another trade for this strategy. So let's go back to the edit screen. And in here at the bottom, the rules, let's pretend that we're going to try to create an order based off of ATR. So the way rules work is they have two different sections to them: conditions and actions. So a condition is, what do you want me to listen for? And then the action is, when I hear that, what do you want me to do about it? So a condition might be listening for our alerts and saying ATR should be greater than 4. So if I set up an alert in TradingView and send this ATR value to TradeLab, and I'll show us how to do that here in a little bit. If I send greater than 4, I can have it run an action. And here, an action could be setting a variable, it could be doing some math, or perhaps playing a sound, or we could place an order. So let's place an order, and that's it. To create a very, very simple rule, of course, is to create a different condition or multiple conditions and then run actions. So if I wanted to say I wanted my ATR to be 4, and I wanted to make sure that the alert that came in had the right symbol, right? So I have my symbol set to ADA, and I could be hearing lots of different alerts. So I want to be sure that the ATR that I'm hearing is the right alert for my symbol. So what I can do is I can set in custom alerts. I can set, symbol to be equal to, and then I can click on reference field. So normally I would just type in, say, ADA right here. But in order to make sure that it's the right symbol that's attached to my strategy here, instead of having to type ADA, I can reference the strategy itself. So I can, instead of typing it in, I can click reference field, check this box, and then I'm able to search and say symbol. And this capital symbol here, this is the symbol that I'm using for the strategy. So now I can say make sure that symbol equals symbol, and that allows me to filter out any other alerts that would be for other symbols. Now, why wouldn't we always do this automatically? Why wouldn't that be built in? This is actually meant to be this way. You will have to set up symbol equal to symbol quite often. But the reason for that is because in some cases you might actually want to hear a alert from a different symbol and act upon it. Say that I'm trading Ethereum and I want to uh, hear something that's going on with Bitcoin, because Ethereum often follows Bitcoin. And so if something goes on with Bitcoin, I could notify my Ethereum strategy and have it react off of that. So that's one of the reasons why we have it set up this way. Um, this is all to say that this strategy builder is very early. This is the beta version of TradeLab, and there's going to be some things that we're going to streamline, and that'll be one of them. Make that a little bit simpler. But for now, just keep in mind that when you set up rules, you will often have to make sure that you're talking about the right symbol and even sometimes the right interval. So if you see here, I could say interval, and then you'll have to type in an interval that you're interested in on your chart. So some of our strategies use multiple intervals, so we could send an alert from the 1 hour and the 30 minute and then the 5 minute, and drill down and find the best exact entry. And so this is where you would type in, say, the 1 hour, however you want to send that in your alerts, and then it would go ahead and place that order. So some other things that we can do with rules is we can also do ORs. So everything that I have here is an AND. So I can say if my ATR is greater than 4 and my symbol is ADA, the symbol that I've chosen for the strategy, and the alert says that it's from the 1 hour chart, then place an order. That's what this rule is right here. But if I wanted to do something else, if I wanted to have it listen for RSI, then I would create another rule. So I have two entry rules now, and these would both run every time that my strategy hears an alert. So this rule would run, and if all of these conditions are correct, then it would run its actions. Or this rule would run, and it would run its actions. Now, this is an or, but it also means that all of these can run in succession. So if this rule runs and it's successful, it'll run its actions. And if this rule also runs and it has RSI that's equal to 8, then at that point this would also run, and we could set a variable, or we could also place a strategy, or sorry, we could place an order as well if we wanted to. So you could have this or this, and they could both place an order, right? So that is just to say that when the rules run, we can create a second entry rule and we'll see that these rules run side by side. You can have as many rules as you want, and as long as you're looking for entry, all of your blue rules will run together. If you're inside of a trade, then all of your orange rules will run together. We can look at our first rule and see that we have three different parts to our condition statement. It's almost like we're saying, if ATR is greater than 4, and our symbol is the correct symbol, ADA, which I have selected at the top here, and if our interval, if the alert that we're being sent has an interval from the 1 hour chart, then we can go ahead and place an order. Okay, so that's what this rule is saying. Now we can create a second rule and have it run side by side, and this rule we could say that our ATR is less than 4, but it's also got to be greater than 2. So if our ATR is less than 4 but greater than 2, then let's go ahead and say that we know that it's a lesser amount. The volatility is lower. So we should probably lower the amount that we want to trade, or perhaps lower our leverage before we place an order. So we could do that by saying, let's set our strategy's leverage, and we could set the leverage to 2 instead of having it normally be 5. Right? So normally it would be 5, and if we hear that the ATR is less than 4 but greater than 2, then we'll set our leverage to 2, and then we'll go ahead and place an order. Right? So that's also a rule that we could do. So now we're doing two different actions back to back. We're first setting our leverage, and then we're placing the order. So the order that actions run is important. So if you set your leverage before you place an order, then that order will be placed with the leverage that you set. If you set your leverage after you place your order, that's not actually true. But the order that actions run is important. So if we wanted to do some math, the first thing that we would do is set our leverage to 2. And then if we wanted to increment our leverage, we would say increment it by 3. So that'll set it back to 5. So we're setting it to 2, and then we're adding 3, right? Now, if I were to swap these and say increment it by 3 and set it to 2, then it would take the beginning 5 that we have, and it would increment that by 3, and then it would, if this was down here, if we swap these and we say this was set and this was increment by 3 and by 2, now we're going to be adding 3 to 5 and we'll have 8. But then the very next step, we're going to set that whole thing back to 2. Right? So these run in order is the important thing. So at that point, we know that entry rules run when we're looking to enter a trade, and exit rules run when we're looking to when we're in a trade and we're looking to find an exit. So we've gone over how fields work. We've also seen how we can use different strategy properties from up top, and we can change them on the fly. So if I wanted to change my amount, and I could type 100, and this would increment my amount by 100, or I could set it to 100. I could decrement it, I can multiply, divide. Modulus, if you're interested in what that is, modulus is a way to, you can look it up on Google, but basically it's a way to find the remainder of something. So if I say 5 modulus 2, then I would say how many times can 2 go into 5? Well, 2, but then there's 1 left over, right? So instead of 5 divided by 2, the answer would be 2 or 2.5. Modulus says how many are there left over. So 5 modulus 2 would be 1. 3 modulus, 5 modulus 3 would be 2, because there's 2 left over after you take 3 out, right? So that's all modulus is. You can look it up, but it's a type of math operator that you can use. So those are the different math actions that we have. We also allow you to set timers. So you can create a different rule. So let's say I create another rule and I name this rule, let's name it RSI overbought, right? So if I'm going to send a new type of alert, and let's say that this type of alert has a type on it, and it's RSI overbought. Now I can send a alert from TradingView over to TradeLab with the text RSI overbought as the type, and if I hear that, then perhaps I want to place a trade. So instead of placing a trade over here, if I hear my ATR, then I could delay hearing this, and I could try to run a rule to see if my overbought is true or not, right? And so what I would do is I could run a rule timer, and this will delay running a certain rule. You can use this to also reset a variable. So say I set my leverage to 2 and I wanted to have that expire. So say that I heard this and this is a good sign and I want to set it to 2, but if I don't place a trade in a while, then I want to end up, say, 5 minutes, then I want to have that expire and set it back to, say, 5, right? So at that point, what I would do is I would say set leverage to 5, and if my leverage, my strategy leverage, see I selected, instead of custom alerts, I selected strategy from the field type. So there's several different field types. You have custom alerts. These are all the alerts that you send. System alerts is stuff that's built in the TradeLab. We'll go over that later. Strategy is all of these options up here. So it's your leverage, your amount, your side, your symbol, all of that sort of stuff. Trade is several different types of fields having to do with the trade. So those are things like current margin, current price, profit, entry price, your account balance, your ROI, return percentage, how much the price has moved since you've entered, that sort of stuff. And then also variables, and we've yet to get into that, but I'll cover that here shortly. So say, getting back to our example, say that we want to set our strategy and we want to make sure that we want to set our leverage back to 5, and we want to do that when our leverage was set to 2. So let's say that we don't want this to run all the time. We can say disable auto run, click this, and now this won't run when it hears an alert. Okay, so now we can go back up to here and we can say, I'm going to listen for this signal, and if this signal goes well, then I'm going to set my leverage to 2. Okay, and in 5 minutes, so 0 hours and 5 minutes, I'm going to run my RSI overbought rule, and that's going to determine if my strategy leverage is still 2, and if it is, it'll set it back to 5. Now, in the meantime, I could have this other rule run, and it would place an order, and then this we wouldn't have to set my leverage back, and it would place an order with a leverage of 2. So you see how that works. I can have multiple rules running, and they can collect alerts over time. And if one alert comes in with the ATR and it's between 2 and 4, then I can set up a system where I lower my leverage. And if in 5 minutes I don't place a trade, then I can put my leverage back where it was. If I do place a trade, then it's because I heard that the ATR went above 4, and now I'm all good, and I want to go ahead and place a trade, right? So that's one example of how we can use rules and do a little bit of logic to automate some things that you normally wouldn't be able to automate with simpler middleman bots. So now let's talk about variables. In order for a strategy to remember information from the past, we have to save it in what we call a variable. So let's say that we're inside of a trade now, and we're on the exit side doing our orange exit rules. Okay, so we're inside of a trade and we're listening for another type of alert, and this type might be let's just say it's a sell alert. Let's just say that we hear something, and let's say that we have a weak and a strong sell alert. And let's say that we want to hear the weak alert first. And we only want to place a trade if we get both of them. Okay? So let's use that as an example. So we can say our weak sell, okay? And if we hear that weak sell, then we want to save that information. And then if we hear a strong sell, we want to make sure that we've heard the weak sell. And if we've heard both of them, then we can go ahead and place an order. Okay, so in order to set this up, we're going to scroll up to the top. We'll go ahead and click the Variables tab. It'll ask us if we want to save. Go ahead and hit yes. And inside of the Variables tab, we're going to create a new variable. And we'll call this is ready. All right, and this is ready is going to have a type of true false. So we have a couple different types of variables. We can have a string, which is like words, like hello, hi, right? And you can type in whatever you want in as a string. So you can save that. So if you wanted to save, a name of something, or whatever it is that you want to save, you could save that as a word, right? You could also have variables that are numbers. These are really common, right? So if you wanted to save your ATR, if you wanted to save your RSI, if you wanted to do some math to get the average of several different RSI plots and save that, you could have, say 5 different variables for RSIs, and then take all of those, combine them together and get an average and save that in a 6th variable, right? So you can have as many variables as you want, and you can save different numbers, different letters and words, and you can also save true and false, and that's what we're going to do here. So is ready, that's going to be a true false variable. Here at the variable screen, of course, you can name your variable. You can set a description. This is useful for when you're sharing your strategy. The variable screen almost becomes like a settings screen. So you can store all of the different things that you need to change here. And then if you share this with somebody, they can come in here and see all of the different variables that are settings that they can change. And if you put a description in here, that just sort of helps them understand what this is for, right? So we can set our value, of course, we can set our type. The read-only checkbox here, this is preventing a strategy from changing the variable. So if this is a variable that somebody can only come in and change themselves by clicking this edit button and manually changing the value, then you want to go ahead and check this box. That means that it can only be read by the strategy. Now, if the strategy needs to change this, it needs to be able to write to it and change its value, then we'll go ahead and turn this off so that we can change the value of is ready, right? And that's what I want to do here. So I'm going to want to set this to true whenever we've heard our weak sell. That's what I'm doing, right? So I've created a new variable. I'm going to hop into edit. And now that I have a new variable, I can go into our alerts. I need to, my session expired, sorry about that. I can go into our alerts. All right, and now that I'm in the strategy builder, all right, and now that I'm in the strategy builder, all right, now that we're back at the strategy builder, we want to scroll down to our rules, and we want to use our new variable. So we will set our action for our weak sell, that when we hear this weak alert, we're going to set, instead of a strategy field, we'll set a strategy variable. And the strategy variable that we just created, is ready, is listed right here. So we select is ready, and we're going to set is ready to true. So we're going to check that box. So now when we hear our weak alert, we know that we're ready. And when we hear our strong alert, we're only going to place an order. We'll put an action for close order. So we'll close this trade only if we hear strong and we know that our strategy variable is ready is set to true. So now this is only going to run if this has already run. And so now we have a gate, right? We're only doing this if this has already happened. So that's another example of how we can use simple logic to determine the behavior of a strategy. Another great thing about variables is that you can have strategy and global variables. So we went to the variables tab here in the strategy builder, and that led us to variables that are specific to this strategy. We can have as many as we want, but these variables will only exist in this strategy, and they won't harm any other variables on any other strategies. So this keeps everything self-contained so that things don't get mixed up, right? However, we also do have the ability to create global variables. If you look at the left side and go under the global variables link here, we'll see the global variable screen. It's very much the same. We have a name and a value and the type of variable that you want. What this allows you to do is create variables that are shared between different strategies, between different bots. This is important when you want a strategy to talk to a different strategy. So you could have one strategy change a variable and have another strategy read that variable and notice that it has changed. And you could have that react to what that strategy said. So that's just another way to create complex behaviors between strategies if you ever needed to. Earlier, I said I was going to show you how to use dynamic take profit and stop loss lines in your strategy so that they can react to alerts on the fly. To do this, I'm going to show you an example that you can find in the Community Strategies panel. If we go to Community Strategies and go down to the dynamic take and stop ladder example, you can copy this, hit yes, and we'll be redirected back to the My Strategy screen where we can look for the strategy that we just copied, which will be up here, right here, and we can hit edit. So inside of the dynamic take and stop example, we'll see that we have a fake entry rule on the left side, that this just looks for a buy signal. And then we place an order and we set a couple strategy variables. These are pretty important. These are the take line and the stop line for the strategy. And once we enter a trade, we have a couple different rules that help us monitor the take profit and the stop loss, as well as a rule that allows us to jump out if our position has become too small. So the way that this would work, we'll hop over to variables and show you how it's all set up. We basically come into here and we set up a starting take and stop line. So here's our starting stop line, and then our starting take line is right here. And we would fill in these according to the description here. So this is, it says it's based on percentage. So this would be 2%, and our stop line would be -2%. So for a long trade, we want our stop line to be lower, and we want our take line to be higher, right? And if we're going short, that would be the opposite. We want our stop line to be above where we are, and we want our take line to be below where we are. So on a short, our take line would be negative and our stop line would be positive. And there's reminders here to sort of tell you how that would work. This should be negative if it's a long trade. So from here, we can set our stop line and we can set our take line, and you'll see that we also have a minimum position that we can define of how much USD our position should be, and if it's below that, that's when that last rule runs to go ahead and close our position because it got too small. And we also have a line move. This line move tells us how much we want to move our take and stop lines each time that we hit our take. So in this example, we're using a single take line and a single stop line. And what we're doing is rolling them upwards or downwards towards profit. So as we enter, our take line would be set at 2, and our stop line would be set at -2 around our entry position. If we go up 2% and hit our take line, then what's going to happen is we're going to run this take rule, the first exit rule, take profit rule, and we're going to see that our price movement is greater than or equal to the take line, which is 2. So then what we're going to do is we're going to do 3 different actions. We're going to decrease our position by a take amount, and this is another variable that I forgot to show you. This is the amount of the position that we're going to take away in percentage. So we could take 50% of our position away, and that would, be us taking profit. We could take 15%, whatever you want to do, and you can set that back in the variable screen. The other 2 actions are setting our take and stop line. Since we just hit our take, we want to go ahead and move our take line and stop line upwards if we're in a long, or downwards if we're in a short. So what we'll do is select strategy variables as our field type, then make sure that we have both take line and stop line, and increment them, moving them up by our line move amount. So here we are using variables to basically create a setting screen like I talked about earlier. Instead of using hard-coded static values where you would uncheck this reference field and then just type in a number that doesn't change, we're always using reference field throughout these strategies. It's a good practice because now I can make sure that I'm always using variables, and that makes this variable screen almost like a setting screen, because I can hand somebody this new strategy with a bunch of take and stop logic, and instead of them having to look at the rules, they can come into the variables and just edit the starting stop line, the starting take line, how much they want to take out of the position, the minimum position, and how much they want the lines to move. So this is just one example of how you can use dynamic take and stop lines. It's very simple. We're just using one take line and one stop line and moving them up every time that we hit the take line. If we ever hit our stop line, we would exit. So that's really, just one small example of how you could use this. There's many different ways that it can be used, many different combinations, so feel free to get creative. Now that we've discussed the basics of the strategy builder, let's discuss how to set up alerts and send them to TradeLab so that we can use them in our strategies. So far, you've seen me use custom alerts as a field type so that I can use my ATR, RSI, and other fields. These are all fields that I've set up myself already. Let's show you how to do that. So the easiest way is to use the alert builder that's attached to the strategy builder. So if we just scroll to the top and select alert builder, we'll open up this alert setup screen. And what this does is allow you to set up your own alert template by creating your own fields, and it'll automatically generate a example message for you to put into TradingView. So I've talked a lot about fields up till now, and here we can see exactly what I'm talking about. So here I could add a couple fields and send our volume and maybe our rune up and our rune down. You can name these whatever you want. You can put spaces in them. You can put underscores, dashes. You can capitalize it. You don't have to. It's all up to you. When you put this in there, you can also set up a type for it, as we've discussed before. So these would all be numbers. And you can see that as I'm putting this information in, it's showing up here at the top. So I now have volume, a rune up, and a rune down. And I'll just make these match. So here I can also put in values so that it'll fill out the example message for me. So here I could put 1,000, 3,000, whatever, and that would fill that in, and now I can click on it and it would copy it. Okay, so now let's go over to TradingView, and I'll show you how this all links up. To create an alert in TradingView, I always make sure I have this alerts tab open on the sidebar, and then I click the create alert button at the top. You can also hit Alt-A to open up this same pop-up. What I'm going to try to do now is connect my Arun data up to TradeLab. So I'm going to select my Arun at the condition, and we'll do Arun up first. So if my rune up is crossing, say 50%, I'll send this once per bar. So once per bar, if it crosses, we're going to go ahead and send an alert. And this is sort of an important part. The expiration time, you usually want to set this to open-ended. If you can't set it to open-ended, if that's grayed out, then it's because you don't have a TradingView premium account, and that's okay. All you'll just have to do is make sure that your expiration time is set to like a month out, and then you'll have to extend that. You can always come back into this edit window and extend it, and just make sure that it's always in the future. If you ever do let it expire, you can always come back in and turn it back on, but just know that if the alert does expire, it won't be sending to TradeLab, and then the bot won't function. So that's something to keep in mind. These alert actions, the top three are pretty much up to you. If you want to notify on the app, if you want to show a pop-up or send an email, you can definitely do that. This last one is pretty important. This is how we're actually going to send to TradeLab. And once again, you have to have a premium account to use this feature. So you won't be able to send TradingView alerts to TradeLab unless you do not have you have something that's higher than a TradingView free account. So you can't have TradingView free and send alerts to TradeLab. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So what we're going to do in order to set this alert is we're going to go back over to TradeLab and copy our webhook URL. We'll just click on that. We'll bring it back over and paste that in. And then we can name our alert, and we'll just say that this is a rune up for Ethereum. And then we will copy our message. So once again, just click on that and paste this in. So let's talk about how to send numbers. You saw me put in those numbers earlier, and those were really just placeholders. In order to send live values from TradingView over to TradeLab, we need to use a TradingView variable. I've linked a tutorial from TradingView in the description for this. Basically, we're going to want to use plot points and make sure that we use the right plot point in order to send what we're looking for. So in this example, we want to send a rune up and a rune down. And we're going to be sending a rune up when it's crossing over the 50. And so I'll remove volume for now. And for a rune up and a rune down, we can figure out what the plot points are by looking at the style tab. So if I look at any particular indicator and I click on the cog settings icon, it'll open up this other window here, and this other window has a style tab in it. If you go to style, it shows you all of the plots because you can make them different colors, right? So these are actually different plots, and what you can do one of two things. You can either go here and say plot 0, and plot 0 would always be the first one here, and plot 1 would be the second one, right? So you would you can see here I'm doing open curly, and then plot underscore 0, close curly bracket, close curly bracket. You can find a link to a tutorial in the description that gives you something to copy and paste. But this is how you would target any plot if you don't know its name or what it is, right? Now, if you do know its name, if you look over here and you say, oh, it's a rune up and that's what it's called, then what you could do is you could use plot, the same curly braces, right? Open, and then plot, and then open parentheses, and then in quotations you type in the name. So you would type in Arun up, right? And that, and then close quotes and close parentheses. Okay, so and that's going to be in the description as well, so you can just copy it. But this is an example of how you would target it via the name, right? And so you can do it one of two ways. And I actually usually just use the plot numbers because it's easier. Um, but basically, you have the plot. You figure out what you want to send. I want to send a rune up, and now a rune up is going to be sent via plot 0. I also know that plot 1 is a rune down, so I'm going to send plot 1. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is that I only have plot 1 and 2 because that's all I have with a rune. I can't send my volume at the same time because my volume is in a different indicator. So TradingView only allows you to send information from the indicator that you are currently using on the alert. You can only use one indicator for every alert. So this is why combining information is really important. This is why TradeLab allows you to collect many different alerts and then run the rules against them, because you could go out and get an indicator that tries to combine volume and ATR and a rune and put it in some fancy indicator and give you all of those data in plots in one indicator. But this allows you to do it yourself and piece together information from however many different alerts that you have. So here we've set up successfully a alert that's going to send me a rune up and a rune down, and that's going to send when a rune up crosses the 50. Okay, and we're going to do crossing up. So when it crosses up the 50, I know that it's in a good position, and I'm going to send this. And I'm actually going to say that this is a buy signal, and this is on the 1 hour chart. And so I have my type set to buy signal, and so I know that this is a rune crossing up, right? And I'm using a rune up and a rune down, sending them both just in case I need it, right? So I can hit create, and my alert shows up in here. And I can also create another one, and we'll do a rune down and crossing up over 50. And we know that if that goes over 50 for a rune down, then we probably want to go into short. I'll make sure that that's a once per bar. I'll make sure it's open-ended. I'll make sure that I have my webhook correct. This usually saves, so this should be the same. And then I'll name this a rune down ETH. I will copy, paste this, and we can put in our plots again. And that is it. So now we have our plots. I'll make this a sell signal because we're doing a rune down, and that's it. So we hit create, and now we have two different alerts, and they're going to be sending to TradeLab. So now I have my alert setup complete. I can hit save, and this saves that. So now when I look at my rules now, I can create a new condition and say custom alerts, and here's a rune up and a rune down. So now I'm going to be able to use those as I see fit to create my strategy. So that's going to wrap up the strategy builder tutorial. We've covered how to build a strategy, how rules work, and how to connect alerts to TradeLab in order to use them in your strategies. If you have any more questions, you can always visit our website, TradeLab.ai, and join us on Discord, for more information and some help from the community. Appreciate your time and see you next time.